Next on Currents News, a real-world lesson for Catholic school kids about how important it is to have working smoke detectors at home. A big shakeup at the White House is breaking tonight. The president has fired his national security advisor. Pope Francis is back at the Vatican after his groundbreaking trip to Africa. We'll have the latest on what the Holy Father said while flying home. Plus, a Catholic institution that is dedicated to keeping abandoned babies safe is marking a milestone. The news starts right now.
You're following the wall. We follow the wall.
The FDNY teaching kids about the dangers of fire and smoke. The lessons are coming at a time when deadly blazes are reaching totals that haven't been seen for more than a decade. 88 people died last year. In 2 out of every 3 fatal fires, there were no working smoke alarms. Good evening, I'm Tamara Lane. This summer, a Catholic schoolgirl lost her life when a fire burned down her home. There were no working smoke detectors anywhere in the house. Today, her Catholic Academy is taking steps to make sure that never happens again. Currents News' Tim Harfman reports.
Get down low. We're going to crawl like babies.
Safety first. Students getting a sense of a real-life scenario.
It was like pitch black and I was super scared.
The FDNY paying a special visit to Holy Child Jesus Catholic Academy in Richmond Hill, Queens.
When the door's going to close, you're not going to see. Watch what happens. Now we can't see.
Students walking through this mobile smokehouse, navigating through theatrical smoke to see what it's like in a real fire.
I think the children needed not only to review the rules and procedures, but to feel safe after what we've just gone through.
It was July 21st when a fire ripped through this Richmond Hill home, killing 51-year-old Sylvia Umana and 2 of her children, 19-year-old Gilbert Diaz and 7-year-old Guadalupe Perez. Only Sylvia's 15-year-old son Gabriel Diaz survived. Guadalupe was a student at Holy Child Jesus, entering 2nd grade. According to the FDNY, a damaged air conditioner cord caused the blaze, and there were no working smoke detectors. Today, New York's bravest stressing smoke alarms are the difference between life and death.
You might get hurt and you might not survive.
It's for our safety and to survive fires.
Last year, 88 people died from fires, and in 2 out of every 3 fires, there were no working smoke alarms.
You don't have to worry, there's nothing to be afraid of.
Lieutenant Ryan Gorecki travels with the FDNY's Fire Safety Education Unit, teaching students about the dangers of fire and smoke.
In a real fire situation, it's black. We can see about this far in front of our face, so what we're trying to teach them is that your hands now become your eyes.
But just as these kids are finding light at the end of a dark, smoky hallway, they're also finding light through a dark tragedy of losing a classmate.
They've been told that should they have a day where they're feeling sad or they're afraid, that all they have to do is ask the teacher and they can come down and we'll get somebody to speak with them.
In Richmond Hill, Queens, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
Pope Francis is at home at the Vatican at this hour after a whirlwind 3-nation journey in sub-Saharan Africa. He made his mission a pilgrimage of peace. By nearly every measure, the trip was a big success. Melissa Butts reports on the Holy Father's final goodbye to the African continent.
The president of Madagascar waited for the Pope at the airport entrance to thank him and accompany him to the base of the plane. Both met in a terminal lounge. In the background, you could hear the tunes of farewell songs prepared by choirs. During the brief meeting, the president's wife also gave the Pope the final gift of the visit. Then Pope Francis said goodbye to each of the bishops of Madagascar and some members of the country's government. Meanwhile, a choir sang a melody to send the Pope off on his long journey. Before entering the plane, the Pope turned to say goodbye one last time. At 8:15 a.m., the Air Madagascar plane took off. The trip to Rome will be about 10 hours. The plane will fly over Tanzania, Kenya, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Egypt, and Greece before landing in Rome at around 7 p.m. In Rome, Melissa Butts, Currents News.
The Pope arrived safe and sound at Rome's International Airport tonight. During the trip back home, he held another one of his famous in-flight news conferences. Stay with us because moments away is Crux Rome Bureau Chief Inez San Martin. She was on board the papal plane and will tell us all about what Francis said to journalists. That's still ahead in this newscast. Another big story that's still developing tonight. President Trump firing his national security advisor. John Bolton is out over major disagreements on the hotspots of Iran, North Korea, and Afghanistan. Bolton had the reputation of being a policy hardliner. Trump says he plans to appoint a new advisor next week, which would be the fourth person to hold the job in this administration. The latest now on the devastation in the Bahamas from Hurricane Dorian. The official death toll stands at 50, but is expected to rise as a lot more searchers comb through the mud and rubble. Late today, we checked in with Archbishop Patrick Pinder, the leader of the Archdiocese of Nassau in the Bahamas, for an update on the deadly storm.
We've had hurricanes before. In this instance, in the case of Hurricane Dorian, we've never really had destruction on this scale. At first, you have the stories of the sheer terror of living through a Category 5 hurricane. Many people have lost everything, literally. And basically, this is a life-changing event for a lot of people. One of the things we're trying to do is we have our usual hurricane appeal. We've received a lot of assistance from outside. In instances where we can, we've housed our teachers and so on who've been evacuated, and in some of our parishes, we're in the affected areas, we're doing distribution and feeding programs. This is just the start. This is just the start of our response. For how long we'll be doing this, we don't know, but the next phase has to be the rebuilding phase, and there's a huge challenge before us.
The Bishop of Brooklyn, Nicholas DiMarzio, is asking for donations to help the people of the Bahamas. If you'd like to donate, visit thetablet.org for more information. The biggest crisis facing the islands tonight is locating all the people who are still missing after the storm. Bodies are being pulled from the rubble on Grand Bahama and Abaco Islands. Paula Newton reports on the volunteer efforts of one storm survivor who's trying to bring organization to the massive search.
Vanessa Pritchard started DorianPeopleSearch.com with a handful of volunteers and her laptop. The list is a living document of the missing and located, and a place to start for so many.
There are still people missing, and we have to look at the timeline of where we are. How many days has it been since Dorian passed over the Abacos? How many days has it been since Dorian sat over Grand Bahama for 40 straight hours? And so that's hard. That's really hard.
And survivors are still coping with so much.
Miranda needs to go to the doctor because she was having some back pains and she's 6 months pregnant.
Ann Wilmore in Marsh Harbor has so much on her mind, she hasn't even had time to report one of her relatives as missing, let alone look for her. It's one of the reasons that getting an accurate number of those missing and feared dead has been so difficult to come by. And it adds to the agonizing administrative details now so frustrating survivors.
All passengers that don't have U.S. visa, please proceed to disembark.
In Freeport, dozens of desperate evacuees on a ferry bound for the U.S. were told to get off the boat as they didn't have visas. U.S. Border and Customs Patrol says the ferry company should have coordinated with them and it wouldn't have happened. But it was too late for so many.
Paula Newton filing that report from Nassau in the Bahamas. The wife of the nation's Prime Minister, Patricia Benabi-Minis, is making a plea for help in recovering from the storm.
This is a catastrophe for the Bahamas. And so we cannot, as a nation, can have imagined, nor can we as a nation by ourselves help each other. We need help internationally from the world.
Dorian was the most powerful hurricane on record to strike the Bahamas. An estimated 70,000 homes have been destroyed. Also in the news tonight, 10 sexual abuse lawsuits have been filed against the Diocese of Brooklyn. Jeff Anderson and Associates claims 3 of those suits name offenders who have never been publicly disclosed by anyone. In addition to these lawsuits, the firm and a man named Tom Davis are also accusing Monsignor Otto Garcia, a current priest in the diocese, of abuse. They say the Diocese of Brooklyn did not take his case seriously.
It was basically swept under the rug. They did nothing. They said it was unsubstantiated. And I said, how can people that are committing crimes in the dark be substantiated?
The Diocese of Brooklyn is denying those claims, saying that an independent review board found them not credible. It issued this statement saying the Diocese of Brooklyn categorically denies the allegations made today by Jeff Anderson. He is well aware of the actions taken by the Diocese of Brooklyn with respect to Monsignor Otto Garcia, yet he is making sensational misrepresentations in order to garner media attention. The statement goes on to say the board determined that there was a lack of evidence to substantiate the allegations against Monsignor Garcia. The 10 lawsuits are part of the Child Victims Act signed into law earlier this year in New York, which lifts the statute of limitations to file claims of sexual abuse. Last February, the Diocese of Brooklyn published the names of clergy credibly accused of sexual abuse against minors. The diocese website now has a special section where people can go to and get all the information in one place. It includes the clergy list as well as videos and resources. Go to dioceseofbrooklyn.org and click on the homepage, Clergy Sex Abuse Crisis Response. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops established what is known as the Dallas Charter in 2002 to combat and prevent sexual abuse. Some of the measures include creating the Office of Victim Assistance to help individuals who come forward with allegations of abuse. The office provides counseling, referrals for therapy, and other important resources. Every employee of the Brooklyn Diocese, including students, undergoes mandatory training designed to spot the signs of abuse and how to stop it. Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio meets with survivors and listens to them carefully. One result of those talks is the annual Hope and Healing Mass. To contact the diocese toll-free and confidential sexual abuse reporting line, dial 888-634-4499. A new death is being reported tonight that health experts are linking to vaping. The latest victim is from Kansas. So far, at least 6 people have died from lung disease associated with e-cigarettes. More than 400 other cases of illnesses are being investigated. At least 40 of them are from New York. Dozens of people gathered last night to honor the lives of 9 NYPD officers who committed suicide in 2019. The candlelight vigil was organized by the pro-cop group Blue Lives Matter, along with City Councilman Joseph Borelli and State Assemblyman Michael Riley. They said the suicide crisis is severe.
We see police suicides are a problem nationally, but nowhere else in the country is it happening at this level.
Something's got to be done. Something's got to be done now. I think after the first one, it was a little bit too late.
The group is also calling on Mayor Bill de Blasio to speak out in support of cops. There's a lot more news headed your way, including an exclusive report on a well-known New York Catholic institution that's dedicated to saving abandoned kids. Parishioners are calling it a miracle that could save the church from being forced to shut down. And we'll tell you what the Pope had to say during his in-flight news conference on the trip back from Rome. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstip@thesalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. One New York nun made it her life's mission to save babies abandoned at birth. Many of them left on church steps with nothing but a blanket and a note. Now, years later, what the nun started is helping so many people. Emily Drewby reports on the work that's being done for the children.
Most times it's a hard-to-place adoption.
For over a century, the New York Foundling has kept kids safe. Sister Carol Barnes says it started when the Sisters of Charity opened their doors and hearts to abandoned babies in the 1800s, specifically Sister Mary Irene Fitzgibbon.
She saw a baby abandoned on the steps of the church, and she was so moved by it with great compassion for the child, the vulnerability of the child, And at the same time, she felt compelled to do something about it.
And so she did, renting a brownstone and spreading the word.
And let it be known far and wide, do not abandon your children. Bring your children to me.
A baby was left at their door the very first night they were open.
And pinned to the baby's blanket was a note. Her name is Sarah. Take good care of her. And thousands of babies followed.
The foundling still has those notes written by parents desperate for help the sisters provided.
This is one of my favorite pictures.
Sister Barnes walked Currents News through the New York foundling's rich history. From the baby trains started during the 19th century, a nationwide network of parishes that helped match children with parents all over the country, to caring for sick children during the AIDS epidemic.
The foundling responds to a need, an unmet need, and continues to respond until the need no longer exists.
150 years after the first baby was left at that brownstone, the organization has exploded in size, helping 30,000 people every year in both New York and Puerto Rico.
We are known for our work in preventing families from going into foster care in the first place.
Kirkley Strand says their services keep kids safe and families supported, like their crisis nursery.
Right at the beginning.
Where parents can bring their child to be cared for in the face of an emergency, like a last-minute surgery or homelessness. While the foundling has aged and changed over the years, the Sisters of Charity's mission of protecting children has remained. In Manhattan, Emily Druby, Currents News.
Now for more on our special coverage of Pope Francis in Africa. He's back at the Vatican. On board the papal plane during the flight home, Crux Rome Bureau Chief Inez San Martin. She joins us now from Rome. Inez, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the Holy Father's in-flight news conferences are often important events. What did he have to say this time?
First of all, it has to be said, most of the time the Pope says it's kind of dependent on what we journalists ask him about. So it's always interesting to see what what our reactions are. What do we want to know from the Pope on any given trip? This case, of course, the English-speaking journalist, we asked the Pope about a comment he made on the way to Africa when a French journalist handed him a book about how Americans want to change the Pope, and Francis, quite memorably said that he feels honored at the fact that Americans are attacking him. We try to ask a follow-up question to that, including the fact that is he afraid about a schism from the Catholic Church in the United States? And what Pope Francis said is that he prays that there is no schism, mostly because of the pastoral, the spiritual health of those involved in a schism. But at the end of the day, he said he's not afraid of one, which of course was very interesting, and we're going to see some shockwaves on it for the next few days.
By all accounts, the Pope's pilgrimage of peace was a rousing success. Did he accomplish everything he set out to do?
I believe he did. He had very clear messages that he wanted to deliver in all three countries, and what he told us on the plane is that he was impressed by what he saw. Of course, he was moved. He was shocked. We're talking about three countries, two of them with very extreme poverty. In Madagascar, for instance, 70% of the population lives with less than $2 a day. And this was something that was clearly visible in the streets as he was passing by with the Pope mobile. But he also told us that he felt that he was able to live in the joy that the people in Africa have. And this was very clear. This was part of the intent of the Pope. He wanted to let them know, let the people in Mozambique, Madagascar, and Mauritius that, the Pope remembers them, and the world remembers them, because for the past week, a lot of the eyes of the universe were actually set on these three countries that are not normally on the news cycle.
The three nations Francis visited are all facing major challenges in the future. Do papal trips like this one ultimately make a difference?
They have the possibility, and there's been examples of trips like this making a difference, specifically in the case of Pope Francis in sub-Saharan Africa. The country that is bound to see the most effect of it is Mozambique, that on August 1st signed a ceasefire agreement on two opposing sides of a bloody civil war that technically ended in 1992 after 1 million people lost their lives in the fights but there's still being some hot pockets here and there. The peace agreement was signed, and Pope Francis said to us journalists today, traveling with him, that he wanted to go to Mozambique specifically to support and to encourage this peace process in this war-torn nation in sub-Saharan Africa.
The church in Africa is growing by leaps and bounds. How does the Pope's mission help that growth?
I think of all the trip, everything we've seen, there was one case specific on Sunday when he was in Madagascar, and he visited what is called the city of Akamasoa, which is technically a city within the city of Antananarivo. It's a social project started by a Catholic priest from Argentina, a missionary priest by name of Pedro Peca. And Pope Francis, he had a very strong message to deliver there, talking about how poverty is not inevitable. But most specifically, what he said, or what he wanted the world to see, is that this is what the Catholic Church, when it's based on faith and in good action, can actually do, can help build in a nation. And in the case specifically of Akamasoa, we're talking about a priest who built 5,000 homes that lifted 28,000 people out of poverty.
Inez San Martin, the Crux Rome Bureau Chief, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
The Pope could be jetting off to visit new nations soon. The Holy Father is expected to travel to Thailand and Japan in November. The dates haven't been stamped official yet, but Vatican sources are saying Francis is likely to spend November 20th to the 23rd in Thailand. Then he'll go to Japan for 3 more days, visiting Tokyo, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki. Both nations are majority Buddhist countries. Cardinal Malcolm Ranjith demanded an independent investigation of the Easter Church bombings in Sri Lanka, and tonight he's getting his way. The cardinal did not trust the results of what the government was doing, claiming key intelligence ahead of the terror attacks was ignored. Now Sri Lanka's Prime Minister is appointing an independent commission as a direct result of the cardinal's demand. More than 250 people were killed in the bombings. Still to come on Currents News. A weeping icon of the Virgin Mary. Is it a miracle? And is it enough to save a church's future? We'll hear from a man who is praying. And the tablet has a brand new page called Our Diocesan Family, where you can share your pictures of recent baptisms, Holy Communions, confirmations, marriage, all the joyous sacraments. For more details and to submit your photos, go to thetablet.org/ourdiocesanfamily. Your picture may be published in an upcoming issue of the newspaper. We'll be right back. Finally tonight, a historic Greek Orthodox church in Chicago is facing possible foreclosure. But this Sunday, parishioners believe a miraculous sign appeared. A painting of the Blessed Virgin Mary on the walls of Holy Trinity Church seemed to be crying. The head of the parish council says the two events may be connected.
Some are saying, well, there's still hope. Some are saying she's weeping because we're going to lose our church. So I really, I don't know.
The church avoided foreclosure last year, but the large donation that came to the rescue had problems, leading to the latest threat to shut the doors. The people of Holy Trinity Church are praying that their house of worship will be saved. Church officials have yet to weigh in on whether the Weeping Virgin Mary painting is a miracle. That is Currents News. I'm Tamara Lane. Thank you for joining, because we are putting your faith in the news. We hope to see you again next time.